Hey everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Knights of the Alternate Table, 50 subscriber special. We're now at 57 subscribers, so thank you so much for watching, and I hope you enjoy What If Mexico Won the Mexican-American War Part 2. And as you know, there's 1.5, which saw the battle, and maybe if this goes well, we'll have a 2.5. But I hope you guys enjoy, and have a nice time, and remember to like, share, and subscribe. Thank you. So, as we last left off, the Confederates just won the U.S. Civil War, and now Mexico has a firm ally in the U.S., and the Union is too weak to stop them, to say going after Britain, the only last real threat for Mexico in North America. Britain, on the meanwhile, would be distracted and wouldn't consider Mexico a threat. But Mexico wouldn't want to attack yet. They would be waiting for something bigger to happen, for an excuse to really go to Britain would be focusing on Germany, who was closer to its borders, as they would be a more economic power than Britain would think the Mexicans in Mexico are, and Germany would be starting to rival Navy, and the same reasons for why World War I started in our timeline would have the same reasons that it would start in this timeline. So, Britain would slowly be preparing for war with Germany and not really focused on Mexico. Germany, therefore, would start allying itself with Mexico, so now Mexico would have a good excuse to declare war on Britain, to take Canada, without it being any real threat. Meanwhile, Germany would also look over to the US for an ally, as now, without the South, they are even more Germanic than they were in our timeline. The US would gradually agree, and would so form a new Central Power thing with Austria-Hungary. With both the US and Mexico being allied with Germany, they would loosen their tensions and truly become allies. Meanwhile, the Confederates would get jealous, as the Mexicans were supposed to be supporting them in their conflict, whether it's ideology or all-out war. So they would move closer to other countries, such as Britain and France, to quickly try and save their skins and not be left to be destroyed by the US or Mexico. Britain and the Confederates would become allies with one condition: no slavery. The Confederates would be forced to comply, but now it's even later in the game, so this would hurt their culture and their economy even more, leaving them off in a worse state than if they would just keep on not having allies. So, they would get rid of slavery with much protest, but it would be done by the government, and they would start to modernize. Meanwhile, the newly freed African Americans would quickly come and run over across the border to the US, as they were now free. This would make the Confederates lose over 1/3 of their population, which would totally cripple their population in the upcoming war that everyone knew was coming, and they couldn't afford it. So, they would be trying to stay peaceful as possible and relying on Britain as much as they can, with less economy. With the assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand and the denial of the demands from Serbia, they would go to war, while the country would begin marshalling their troops to mark into 4 years of just slaughter. So, with the war starting, many countries would have to modernize fast, mostly the CSA, as they have lost millions of dollars and millions of people in their population. This would hurt them. The war would overall be the same for the first 6 months in our timeline, but with one exception. There wouldn't be any trench warfare. The German war machine would start moving more and more. Meanwhile, the French forces would lose more and more men, and Britain would have to start relying on its colonies more. Meanwhile, Russia would take some more land than in our timeline, as they were focusing on France. But Austria-Hungary would still lose a lot of land. Meanwhile, the Canadians and British forces would be left with fighting the Mexicans and the Americans, who are quickly taking up. They would quickly call in the Confederates, who would see this as a quick opportunity. But the Americans and Mexicans would be expecting this, and so overall would push into their territory more, but less so, as this would become trench warfare and be the truly type of trench warfare that everyone would be expecting in our timeline. Italy would now join the war, but as in our timeline, it would be stalled with mountain fighting. Meanwhile, Britain, not having enough troops to support France with the war back in the west, would lose even more land to Germany, losing all of Belgium and losing even more troops to fight the war with the Eastern Uprising in Ireland. They would quickly crush this, though, even though they would be distracted for the time being. Sorry for the different colors on the previous map. The program I used to use this map doesn't allow you to keep the same colors for a new map, so I'm sorry about that. Meanwhile, Mexico, not being officially part of the Central Powers, would join over and not officially be at war. They would stall the front with Britain while the US going after Britain. The US and Mexico would then get competitive over the CSA and who could take more land the fastest. With the US and Mexico getting overly competitive over taking land from the CSA, they would quickly go into war with themselves, especially clashing in Missouri, where their borders meet. Germany would choose its ally closest to them, the US being as their more Germanic culture than Mexico, and the US still having a better industry than Mexico. Mexico would therefore be at war with three powers on all sides now. Meanwhile, Romania would join on the Central Powers side this time as they were winning the war, and Greece would once again join the Allied side, but Serbia would quickly be overtaken by Bulgaria and Hungary as well as Greece. Meanwhile, the Germans would finally take Paris, and they would be forced to surrender with the collapse of Russia, as well with the Russian Revolution. That was the same in our timeline. So, with the peace still now up, and their Austria-Hungary finally taking land from Italy, all of the Entente would start. Ireland would gain its full independence from being released from Britain with an Entente defeat. Meanwhile, Germany would take most of northern France and Belgium. Austria-Hungary would take the Alps bordering Italy up to Venice. Romania would then take parts of Ukraine, and Poland and the Balkans and Finland would become independent. Meanwhile, Bulgaria would take Serbian and Greek territory, with Turkey also getting Greek territory, and no one else get land in Europe. But in Africa, Germany would take more land from Belgium and France and Britain to expand their colonies, and Turkey would take northern Africa as to expand the Ottoman Empire, as well as the Caucasus, which are not shown in this map. Mexico would quickly surrender to try and save itself from losing too much land. America would gain land from the Louisiana Purchase as it did in our timeline, as well as fully annexing the CSA and gaining Quebec and Nova Scotia, as well as gaining the Bahamas. They would not take Oregon Country, as that was now firmly part of Britain, as well as California and New Mexico, as that was also firmly part of Mexico in culture. Germany would not have to face any problems, especially with America now being compliant, besides some communist uprisings, namely in England, Mexico, and Quebec, who would all quickly be put down by the US and Germany themselves. There would be non-successful communist revolutions, except for one, which we're going to talk about in the next slide. Quebec being the only main communist revolution to survive, though they would become more of a US puppet state with the Communist Party in charge. There wouldn't be a full-blown dictatorship, more as a republic type of government, such as in the US, with the Communist Party being the lead one as it was the most popular one, under heavy supervision from the US. They would join the Soviet Union to try and revive their fallen comrades and spread the global revolution. Meanwhile, everywhere in the rest of the world, it would be a battle, a cold war between communism and monarchism. The imperialist monarchists would have colonies, while the communists would believe in the workers' right for people. I don't believe there would be a World War II over this, as the communists would be deeply outnumbered, though they would try and incite revolution all throughout the rest of history. Hey everyone, thank you so much for watching this video, and be sure to subscribe. Next subscriber goal is 100 subscribers, so I hope to see you there. And if you watch to the end, thank you so much, as most people don't watch to the end. So you get a special reward. You get the honorary award. So yeah, good job. That's me clapping because I have to use my hand to hold down the microphone. Oh hey, we're at the end. So wow, if you liked World War I, here's a whole playlist full of World War I videos. And if you haven't seen part 1, here's part 1 just for you to watch, which I don't know why you'd be watching this. Anyway, have a good one and goodbye!